It's funny you said that about the guys, like you did one meditation retreat, you met one woman, she showed you the records and you're like, got it. And I have a friend who is doing work now with men. She's a woman. And she said there was a retreat that she led and it was only men. And she's like, it was the fucking best. She's like, because the guys are like, okay, so what's my limiting belief? Oh, okay, got it. And they're like, and they just write it down and they're done.
It's done.
Literally, like, because women were so like, I don't know, we're just so like emotionally like driven that we're like, oh, but there's this thing I need to mourn, I need to da da da. And the guys are like, cool, got it, moving on. And they just take it and like run. She's like, it was a dream. Like it was an absolute dream.
I feel like the Akashic Records though are kind of like something that might maybe freak a guy out who is very logical.
Completely.
So like in terms of like when you first had a reading, were you like, what the hell? Or was...
I felt so fucking liberated.
Okay.
Wow.
Just because I had been struggling with this.
Yes.
When I left my company, my decision point, I had made more money in a 12-month period than I had ever dreamed I would make. And like my decision point was like, I'm either going to kill myself or quit my job. And so to figure out like what that pattern was just like, you know, somebody open up the gates and like the sun is shining and I'm so happy. You know, it was like crazy. It was very physical, but she talked, but I could feel it almost in every cell of my body.
Wow.
It just kind of dropped in. And I find that's true to varying degrees with people that show up, and what shows up for them is whatever they're ready for. And it's not like it just something I'm thinking of. It's like coming from whoever shows up for work. So I'm kind of channeling the higher self of whatever client I happen to be working for at the time. So it's a very like you talking to you through me process, but I've lived a lot of these situations. So I get a lot of people that are dealing with the things that I've dealt with. And the underpinnings of all of my challenges was this kind of thread of like not being good enough. Like it's existed since childhood for whatever reason.
Right.
And so like when you don't feel that, your whole life is built upon a foundation of like, you're not good enough. So you start making up for it in all these different ways, creating relationships that feed certain things for you because you don't feed it yourself. And I talk about that in this process I've developed as kind of like the sovereign state of man. I kind of look at each person as a country. It's like if you've got plenty of wheat and natural resources and water and whatever you need to survive, like you're making good trade agreements with anybody around you. This is maybe a very masculine way to think about healing and stuff. It's like trade. But if you like don't have love, you're making all kinds of fucked up agreements in your life so that you can get that love from your relationship or from your job or some validation from the outside to kind of make yourself whole. But then that's your foundation is like super jacked up. And I have done that like multiple times and like burned my life down in the process of trying to figure out what that root cause is. And so I really help people identify that without having to go through the fire and torture part of it that I've had to gone through. I think for me, I just didn't know. And when I just made the switch to like, I really want to focus on men's work, I was more thinking of like, what would I have wanted a decade ago? And I'm very blessed to have had really amazing teachers. Most of them were women and all these other experiences. But my path to it took a long time and it was not so accessible. So presenting myself to a group of people that may not search as hard as I did.
Yeah.
I'm an earthy guy. I'm from Texas. I've camped out. I've fished. I've run a business. I've had jobs. Very regular. It's not so guru-y kind of thing. And I'm definitely not in that category.
Yeah.
I just like have some tools that fucking work.
Yeah.
And so people can engage with it and make a difference in their own life.
Yeah. I do, but just before we kind of move on from there, I do want to talk about what the Akashic Records are and how does someone tap into them just so we can like lay the foundation for what exactly that is.
Again, this is like, I'm not guru kind of guy. And I think there's lots of different definitions of what it is. But for me, I mean, and this is my frame of reference, is that it's your soul record. It holds all of the choices and consequences that you have made as your soul has been incarnated into a body at some point in time, future or past. And if you dial deeper, it's like, well, there's no time, so there's no future and no past. They're just different experiences. And these choices and consequences hold themselves in the energy. And when I dial in, I feel the energy. And it usually the stories or whatever kind of information comes through in a way that's digestible for whoever I'm working with. And that there's how that shows up widely varies. Although a lot of times the people that are showing up in that kind of message has something to do with something I've experienced myself or some variation of something.
Yeah.
And I think I have the embodied resonance of those healing opportunities. And so people are attracted to my work that also embody a need to heal the things that I've already healed, which I think is pretty normal in this space.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose, and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.